Hi friends, Andrew Goodall here from Nature's Image Photography, and in this video we're going to get a little spooky with some ghostly photos and tips on how to take them. Before we get started, if this is your first visit to the channel, I would love it if you could hit that subscribe button so you can keep in touch with all kinds of upcoming content from my world of photography. So, why ghosts? It is a bit of a weird subject for a nature and sometimes portrait photographer, but I do have a good reason. Here's the backstory. Over the years I've played around with the idea of shooting transparent figures, usually myself, in a photo just for a bit of fun. Recently I met up with some friends at an abandoned tunnel for a creative photo shoot, and while I was there I decided to try a ghostly photo of our model. Now, apart from some minor editing, this image was captured in camera, but when I posted it on social media, a number of the comments were about what an excellent job I had done putting the photo together using layers in Photoshop. This is a big issue I have with modern photography. These days it seems that any time someone does something even slightly unusual, people immediately assume it's done on the computer. And if you're still learning photography and you believe that, you won't be inspired to get out there and explore what can actually be achieved in camera, using old-fashioned photography technique. So, I decided to organise a proper photo shoot to create some spooky ghost photos in camera. If you have always wanted to know how it's done, you're going to find this interesting. But even if you have zero interest in photos like this, I hope it at least serves as a reminder that the most fun you can have in creative photography is what you can do with your camera. Don't get me wrong, I have nothing against editing and I don't want to start a war with the people who love their software. The photos I'm going to show you have all been edited to some extent, but the essential image of the ghostly transparent figure was all captured in camera. And if you give this a try, I think you'll agree this is still the most fun way to do it. So hi everyone, it's Andrew here. You don't see me in front of the camera very often, but I just wanted to pop in front just to let you know what we're up to today, which is all about making some ghost photos, and not doing it in Photoshop the way most people think it's done, but doing it in camera using a bit of old-fashioned camera technique. Now, to be my ghosts today, we have the lovely Celina. Celina's going to be my model. We've worked together once before, took some beautiful pictures together. You'll find a video on my YouTube just about Celina and our photo shoot at the beach, and there's some info about her and her Instagram in the description below. Now, it does seem a shame to have such a lovely young lady here and have to kill her off to make some ghost pictures. Didn't I tell you about that? Well, it's all in the name of art, and Celina did volunteer, so she's only got herself to blame. So we are going to do some ghost photography. I'll talk you through the process, and once we get started, you can watch over our shoulder while we take some pictures. Okay, so before we get started, I want to talk to you about the equipment I'm going to be using. What I'm doing here, you can do with pretty much any DSLR camera, but everyone is always interested to know what gear I use in these videos. So today's pictures are going to be taken on my Pentax K3 Mark II. If you're wondering what's happened to my Panasonic Lumix G9, that's the one I'm using to film this video. So the Lumix is over there. This is the camera I'll be using. The reason I'm using this camera specifically is because I have, for this camera, an 18 to 135mm zoom lens, which is the lens I want to use. Just that bit of versatility that comes with the zoom lens. I don't have a similar lens for the Lumix. And also I have a couple of filters for this camera, which will become relevant in a second. I'm going to be using a tripod, obviously. This is going to be about slow shutter speed, and in a few minutes I'll be explaining more about that, but if you're going to be doing slow shutter speed, you're going to need to have a tripod, and I'm also going to be plugging in my little remote release cable, so that when I press the button I don't have to touch the camera. I press the button on the remote release instead, and that lets the photograph be taken without bumping the camera. So I'm all set up for some slow shutter speed photography. Now, the other factor, as I mentioned just briefly, is I'm going to be using a neutral density filter. It's nothing but a dark grey piece of glass to go on the front of the camera. It just slots on at the front.
and all it does is darken the situation down. If we were shooting indoors in a darkened room, I wouldn't need this because it would be dark enough. But because we're shooting outdoors, we need to drop the light a little bit so that I can get down to the very slow shutter speeds I want. So I've got this darker piece of glass. I think it's a 5-stop neutral density filter, and all it does is drop the light so that I'm able to work with slower shutter speeds. Okay, so the key to what we're doing is to try to get the slowest shutter speed we possibly can, because the aim of what we're doing here is to have Celina in the picture for half the exposure and out of the picture for half the exposure. So the slower we can go, the more time we have to work with. And if it's not too long in exposure, as Celina runs in and out of the shot, she's going to appear as a blur. But if her movement only takes up a tiny fraction of the picture, she won't stay in one place long enough to really be exposed, except for the time that she's standing still. So in order to get my very slow exposure, you can see on my settings here, I've put the ISO down to 100. We all are accustomed to the idea of putting the ISO up in order to get faster shutter speeds. Now I'm putting my ISO down in order to allow me to get slower shutter speeds. I've put my aperture to f22, I've closed it down as far as it'll go, so that's the smallest aperture I've got, and that reduces the light. And then I've found that by adjusting my shutter speed until the light meter is in the right spot, that brings us to 25 seconds. So what we're going to be doing is having a 25-second exposure. I'll press the button. There's going to be a 2-second delay so that any chance of me bumping the camera is out of the equation. And then Celina's going to stand in one spot for 10 seconds and then run out. The camera then exposes for the other 15 seconds. And when that's all done, you'll see what we ended up with. So this is our first attempt. So wish us luck. Let's see how we go. There's our 2-second delay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There she goes. The camera is now photographing our spooky cabin in the woods behind her. Almost done. And there is our first spooky ghost photo. Okay, so that first shot we just did, it worked out pretty well, but Celina was not quite as transparent as I was hoping she'd be. So we're going to do the same settings again, but this time we're just going to stand in place for 6 seconds and then dash out. So the majority of the photograph is going to be the building, and Celina's only going to be in there for a short period of the time. So back to my remote release. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Run out of there. And the reason I think that the exposure on Celina came out so strong on that first video, first shot, was because of the white dress. And white, as you know, is very bright. It reflects more light than other things around it. So if she was wearing a darker dress, we'd probably be using different settings. This one, though, has worked quite a lot better. Okay, so we've got our basic shot done, and now we're just experimenting a little bit. This time we're doing one where we're going to bring a bit of movement into it. It's 25-second exposure again. Celina's out of sight, as you can see, and over the 25 seconds, towards the end of the exposure, she's going to slowly walk into the shot, and we're going to try to create a misty, ghosty look. So let's see how we go. So we're going to press the button, 2-second delay, click, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So we walk slowly and stop there. That's perfect. So now we're really just going to experiment with a few different settings, a few different locations, try out a few different ideas and poses, and at the end of the video I'll show you the shots, and I think what I'll do is show you the raw files, and then I'll show you the finished pictures after I've done some editing as well. So we're just going to keep on shooting now, and we'll show you the outcome when it's all over.